Hello everyone and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry, a fan channel where everything Dragalia Lost can be found. This video is going to contain my review of the latest summon showcase. It's another Gala remix, this time round, marking the debut of Humanoid Jupiter. We also have a new flame dragon who we've known is coming for a while in the form of Uriel, one of the archangels and Ferris's partner. And finally, we have the return of Gala Prince, also known as Gala Euden, as the returning Gala at an appearance rate up. So this remix is only going to be around for a couple days, and I wanted to post this video about whether or not you should summon before it goes live, just to give my initial thoughts and impressions, especially when it comes to our new character, Humanoid Jupiter, our new dragon, Uriel, and to a lesser degree about Gala Prince, since he has been around for a while, but I still think it's worth providing a little bit of an update on how I see him fitting into current endgame content. So that'll be the plan for today. I'll start off by just trying to answer the question of whether or not you should summon. And if you've been watching any of my recent summoning videos, you will know that I am definitely going to skip on this showcase. The fact of the matter is, I just don't have the summoning resources to throw at this, and when I think about the possible seasonal alts that we're going to get for Dragon Yule, our winter holidays, and also for New Year's after that, I really want to conserve my resources for those showcases if I can, or to the extent that I can with what little I have left. But I really want to save up for then, and I would recommend that in general. When I look at this showcase, I think Humanoid Jupiter, he looks like he's going to have a very fun and unique playstyle with one of his mechanics, but I also don't see him being particularly special in the context of Tartarus, nor in Lilith. He can kind of help with Master Iblis, so that's maybe one area where I feel like he could be at his best, but he just seems like any other light DPS could probably work just as well. When it comes to Uriel, likewise, a good flame dragon for the permanent pool, but not on the level of a Gala Reborn Agni or even a Gala Mars in my opinion, so feels very replaceable. Now we have the 5th Unbound Agni that's also quite good, so yeah, that's my take on Uriel, just okay. And Gala Prince has really proven his worth. If you still don't have him by now, there are good strategies with him involving Chronos Nyx that are quite explosive, can trivialize some content, so that is more of a consideration than in the past. I feel like he's always been good and had roles to play, but now with a truly busted light dragon in Chronos Nyx, and wow, that dragon turned out much better than expected, well, I think there's a little bit more of a reason to want a Gala Prince nowadays because of Chronos Nyx, but I still feel like you can get everything done without a Prince, without a Euden in your roster, if you really need to. So that's kind of my take on this showcase. It feels like one where there's nothing so special or unique or push that it's really a must-have or will make your life a whole lot easier. It seems like a good showcase, like solid. I feel like it's a nice selection of characters. I'm really happy to see Jupiter get a humanoid alt. So now we're just waiting on Zodiark, Chthonius, and I guess technically Brunhilde, because we don't have humanoid Brunhilde, we just have Gala Mim. Kind of the same thing, but also not the same thing. It's not the literal same thing, right, of the humanoid Great Worm. And I feel like they're willing to give Brunhilde lots of alts, so we might actually get that one day. But yeah, Jupiter's a character some of y'all predicted, so good on you for calling this character as part of the Dazzling Defense event and now being playable. It was also sort of teased on the Dragalia Lost official Twitter, and they did something similar last time with Humanoid Mercury, where around the anniversary period or half anniversary period, they started retweeting things that suggested that Jupiter was on the way. They were all Jupiter related, so it's cool that they actually followed through. That's going to be our telltale sign in the future. Whenever we start seeing a lot of Zodiark posts, we'll know that Humanoid Zodiark is on the way. So I'm really happy about that, and I'm happy Uriel's here too, just for the sake of completeness. Like, these apostles and archangels, hopefully at this point after the anniversary event, are really beloved to a lot of players. There may be some players for whom Faris is like their favorite apostle, and they really want Uriel. So I'm happy to see Uriel. I do wonder, we're getting all of them in their dragon form first, so we'll probably get Michael in dragon form as well. but then will we go back and maybe get them in their Heavenly Wings form, just how we got Sandolphin playable as an adventurer. And I could see that definitely happening to sort of milk the Archangels for multiple showcases to come. But yeah, I think it's a nice one here. It's a quality little showcase. It's by no means a bad showcase, but it just doesn't seem to be exceptional in any way or a must-have. And so for that reason, my general recommendation is going to be to skip on this one, sandwiched between Halloween closing up and the holiday showcases that we're likely to get in December. They're not that far off now at this point. I really feel like it's probably going to be best to save. So that's my overall verdict. Now let's talk about these newcomers here, Humanoid Jupiter and Uriel, and then we'll talk a little about Gala Prince too. So I'm going to start with Humanoid Jupiter. Of course, love the fact that you get the different forms in the portrait. There's something so funny about the dragon form, just with the open beak or mouth there, and then the really dapper looking attorney form on the other side. I just think that's a funny juxtaposition. But anyway, the unique thing about Jupiter's playstyle is he has a mechanic very similar to the electric rings that he applies around folks in his trial, High Dragon trial. So in that trial, when you're hit with one of those electric rings, there's a cooldown counter above your head, and when it runs out, you can potentially shock other players that are in your vicinity or other AI teammates that are in your vicinity. And the more that you get hit by attacks, the larger the radius around you expands to where you could have a huge circle around you that's going to result in damage to your whole team. So the adventurer version kind of plays into that mechanic with something called overcharge that sort of works the same way. So let's start with the first skill though, Thunder Strike. This just deals damage, causes flash burn, and grants the user a strength amp. If the attack hits an enemy that has the overcharged effect, so think about a little electric circle around them, then it does bonus damage based on the effect's level. If overcharge is at its maximum level, it's removed after the bonus damage is dealt. So this does 1200 damage at base, which is not particularly good. It does cause flash burn, but if you're hitting an enemy that has overcharge level 4, then you're getting an additional chunk of damage here, so you're basically doubling your damage. That's pretty good, and this is a little bit of a spoiler for the rest of the kit, but when overcharge is removed, that does damage to the enemy it got removed from too. It kind of explodes. So that's an additional bit of damage you're getting by removing the overcharge. The other thing to consider here is the ability to apply a strength amp on the first skill, meaning this is more spammable than you'll see on a lot of the Trials of the Mighty Spiral adventurers. So in case you've forgotten, when it comes to strength amps, the level 1 self amp increases the user's strength by 3% for 60 seconds. Then you level it up to 2 the next time you use it. A level 2 self amp increases the user's strength by 5% for 60 seconds. Both of those are very minuscule. The third time you use this, you'll level it up to a level 1 team, which just so happens to be Jupiter's max, and that's going to increase the whole team's strength by 20% for 30 seconds. So it still caps off with just Jupiter by himself at 20% strength for the whole team for 30 seconds, and you can probably maintain full uptime on that by refreshing it, I would guess. So I think that you're going to want to combine Jupiter with other light adventurers that have a higher team amp max level. So if you have Vixel with the Trials of the Mighty Spiral, he has a max level of 2. Isaac has a max level of 2. Civilian Leaf, another max level of 2. Vixel probably being the most common among those, unless you've summoned on those more recent showcases for Isaac or for Leaf specifically. But the other 2 adventurers you could consider are Gala Prince and Gala Luca, because with their Trials Spiral, both of them have a max level of 3. And at level 2, you get the entire team 40% strength up for 30 seconds, and at level 3, you get the entire team 60% strength up for 60 seconds. So that is currently the ceiling on strength amps. It's really not that high outside of Curse of Nihility content, because normal buff bots can easily achieve 100% or more strength buffs at a time characters like Elisan or Templar Hope, let's say. But in the Trials of the Mighty, and Sinister Dominion, where Curse of Nihility happens, then any kind of marginal strength buff is pretty good. So maybe this will be helpful in Legend. If they really want to sell amps, like maybe in Legend, if you don't have amps, you take more corrosion damage or something really ridiculous. So like it becomes exclusive to the amp characters that can actually clear it. Maybe they could do something like that, just as a little bit of a wrench in our best laid plans. But yeah, unless amps are especially needed for Lilith, I personally have never used strength amps for clearing Lilith and master difficulty and below, so unless they're somehow mechanically needed for Legend, I don't see them being especially necessary or important. But there are a good amount of light characters now to where you could build a team to support this if you wanted to. I think the more interesting thing here is just going to be, can you get to a level 4 overcharge, at which point this is going to be doing solid damage, and also the fact that this causes flash burn, that is going to enable this to be effective against Iblis on the master difficulty, where you generally need to be able to flash burn the boss. If you beat the boss quickly enough and start with paralysis, technically you don't have to have a flash burn character, so that is a workaround. But if you're going to take a little bit longer through the master difficulty and just have kind of an average team, well, you probably are going to need to be able to apply both afflictions. So it is still an affliction I think is valuable. It's still a pretty rare affliction, but we did just get it on Halloween Laxi. So this to me is a good skill. It's not shareable, but a pretty good skill. Okay, then Spark Ignition applies overcharge to the target, and if the user is hit by an attack that can be avoided with the damage immunity provided by skills while using this skill, but before it applies overcharge, it will instead apply 4 levels of overcharge to the target and nearby enemies. So essentially the way that you want to use this is to iframe an attack that you can iframe, and if you do that successfully at the beginning of the skill before it applies the stack of overcharge, then it's going to apply it at level 4 instead of just applying level 1. So I would imagine you want to save this to iframe. Maybe if you already have some stacks of overcharge like level 3 on an enemy, you can upgrade it to level 4. But generally speaking, I think it's going to be best to use this to iframe. It's not a skill that you're going to want to just throw out there without getting that specific benefit from it. But we still don't really know what overcharge does, so we'll continue reading on. So co-ability, strength plus 10%. Chain co-ability is light, team strength amp equals curse res 100%. I do think because of the amp application being on the first skill, that Humanoid Jupiter is going to be able to easily get at least one team strength amp, level 1 team strength amp up with very good uptime. So this is a way to give your whole team, or at least all the light adventures on your team, curse res. It's kind of cool for your poison res characters, give them dual resistances. Abilities here are Light Worm's Nature 2. So this one is going to explain how overcharge works. First of all, it gives you paralysis resistance. That's more of a flavor thing than an actual important mechanical thing, but I do think that's a nice little touch that we've seen on the other humanoid dragons. At least I think we've seen it on all of them. Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't remember if Midgard Stormra has that, but Mim has that. I'm pretty sure Mercury has that as well. So anyway, when shapeshifting for the first time, the user becomes Jupiter, regardless of what dragon they're equipped with, and the second time onwards, they transform into High Jupiter instead. Also, when the user dodges an enemy attack, it applies overcharge to the attacking enemy and grants the user a strength amp with a maximum TM amp level of 1. This effect won't activate again for 10 seconds. So, dodging is one way of applying overcharge, and it's also a way to accelerate your strength amps even further. So yet another way that you're going to have very good uptime on your strength amps here. Okay, and then as for what overcharge does, it has 4 levels and deals damage to the affected target and nearby enemies when the effect is lost. The damage and its area of effect increase with its level, and when removed at level 4, it also inflicts paralysis and stun. So if it's level 1, it's going to be a small radius, takes a long time to expire. As it escalates, larger and larger radius, expires more rapidly, and if it expires at level 4, paralysis and stun. The only thing that's missing here is it doesn't say how much damage it actually deals when it explodes, So this is going to be an important factor, I think, in Humanoid Jupiter's overall DPS. Hopefully it's damage comparable to a skill, maybe a weaker skill. That would be pretty reasonable. I think you'll be able to get this level 4 application with regularity on enemies, but I'm not sure how rapidly off the top of my head. We also just don't know the damage straight up, so if it's really low, that's not great, but I don't think it'll be that low. It's a new adventure. I think it'll be competitive. And the paralysis and stun is kind of a nice little cherry on top. Not all enemies can be paralyzed or stunned, and paralysis, it's less consistent than flash burn, just in the sense that paralysis resistances going back to the early days of the game have tended to start at a high number, whereas flash burn resistances usually start at 0. So flash burn's a little better. It also lasts longer than paralysis. The thing paralysis had going for it, which is mostly patched at this point, is that you could spin with it because it would stutter the enemy. So you could spin Zodiark back in the day. You can still spin some bosses. I think you could spin Mercury not too long ago as far as her Aqueous Prison. But nowadays, paralysis, I feel like I don't even really run Paralyzed Punisher that often anymore. It just doesn't seem to be that relevant or worth it in a lot of my light teams when there are other Wormprint options, or there are other needs, like maybe I'm wanting to plan for Berserk where I'm not going to be paralyzing the enemy, so I'd rather go with Gauge Accelerator or Force Strike damage or Broken Punisher for when the enemy has broken. So Paralyzed Punisher, I feel like it's one of the weaker ones right now. If it were available on a 4-star print, that would be worth considering, but I just don't see this as a huge value add, but it is kind of nice. And once again, just like with the Paralysis Res, I feel like it's just a nice little flavor thing that Jupiter can do this. I also think there's a good potential here with the dragon forms for Jupiter to be doing a really nice amount of dragon damage. Now, unfortunately, he's not going to be able to transform into Kronos Nyx, which is just so busted that a lot of the optimal light unit builds now are just build them for the fact that they can shapeshift into this incredible dragon. But High Jupiter has a pretty good dragon form if it plays the same way as the original High Jupiter, so that's kind of nice. And of course, for flavor reasons, you gotta have them transform into Jupiter and High Jupiter. Anyway, we have Poison Res 100% to close things out, and then Arc Absorption 2 fills the Dragon Gauge by 20%. That's very solid. And restores the user's HP if they are in range of the attack dealt by the overcharged effect when it is lost. Alright, fair enough. Yes, you get some healing off of it, and 20% Dragon Gauge, very solid. So I wonder now how the amp uptime will be, just because you may end up being a dragon for quite a while. Quite a large amount of the fight if you get that much Dragon Gauge that often, which may make it so that you're no longer getting as many amps off your Thunderstrike and off your, well, I guess you could still get your dodge one, and this overcharge, I guess this still works when you're a dragon. Overall, I just feel like this is going to be a very fun character to play. That's kind of my take. Regardless of the power level, just applying this overcharged effect onto enemies, seeing those electric rings around them, and planning for that big detonation where it hits everybody, I think that's just going to be kind of fun. It feels like a really nice design here. It doesn't seem like anything super special to me as of now, but who knows? Kronos Nyx on paper didn't seem to be all that either necessarily, and was really good. So one consideration with these initial impression videos is always what the exact modifiers are going to be. In this case, one of the hidden modifiers is on the overcharge damage, I guess technically on how the dragon form will perform as well. So just some other things to consider. I still feel like it's not enough to merit summoning. The Flash Burn's good for Master Iblis. The amps are good in the Sinistro minion in general. The self-healing could help a little bit with corrosion, and the fact that you're shapeshifting, that's also a way to avoid corrosion. So if you've been struggling with Lilith at all, I guess this could be helpful. Tartarus-wise, I don't necessarily see Jupiter being especially effective, but the fact that you can get Dragon Gauge on your own and build up and accumulate Dragon Gauge is a way to kind of bypass some of the Dragon Gauge reduction mechanics of Tartarus. So that could have merit. Like if you can get an early shapeshift, then you can get out of Fury of the Fallen and deal real damage. And you do get a lot of dragon mines in Legend difficulty Tartarus. So a dragon-centric character might do well. I don't necessarily see for co-op though, like you're not necessarily helping with the Dispel. Sure, you're applying Flash Burn, but maybe you don't need to. Maybe you can kind of brute force your way through, not dispelling that Relentless Rage stack. So yeah, it might be just totally fine, but it also feels like there's enough established characters, any character that can pretty much clear that content at this point, that if there's any content that Jupiter would help break into, maybe it's future content like Legend Lilith. Anyway, let's move on and talk about Uriel next. So Uriel looks good. I know a lot of people love his design. He does kind of look like a Dragon Ball Z character to me with his haircut. Of course, it's not golden, right? Like a Super Saiyan form of some type, but just the bod, I mean, have to acknowledge it, right? And the haircut, he just kind of looks like a character from DBZ. That's my opinion. Anyway, we'll read on. So his skills are Angelic Blaze, deals damage to the target and nearby enemies, draws them together, and inflicts Scorch Rend. Simple enough. Nothing too remarkable to note here. Scorch Rend has become a lot more available than it was when it initially made its debut. There are just a lot of characters that can cause Scorch Rend nowadays, including like Leia after her Trials of the Mighty Spiral. Abilities are Strength 60%. This is standard on these Archangels, but then you get a bonus here, Uriel's Favor 2. If the user is attuned to Flamed, grants them the Uriel Zeal effect when they dodge an attack, and it has 3 progressively more powerful levels. So level 1, for 60 seconds, you get 10% extra strength and 20% extra chance of inflicting Scorch Rend. Level 2, for 40 seconds, you get 20% more strength and 40% chance of inflicting Scorch Rend. And then finally, level 3, 30% more strength and 80% chance of inflicting Scorch Rend. So clearly designed to work with Faris here, since his kit is all about dodging, and this gives you bonuses when you dodge an attack. He has a lot of reflexive evasion built into his kit. He also has damage reduction, but it's clearly centered around the dodging aspect of his kit. And he also applies Scorch Rend, and I think he can even reduce Scorch Rend resistance too in his kit on what's his skill called? I don't remember. It's like Carbunculus something. I've played him enough in the raid event that I'm used to hearing him say it, but I can't remember what it is. But it applies Scorch Rend, so this is going to allow you to apply it more throughout a fight. It's fine. I mean, it's nothing exceptional to me where I would be like, let me spin 4 Sunlight Stones on this dragon. I think that's kind of the core problem with a lot of permanent dragons these days, including the Archangels. As fun as they are, they have good designs. So many strong dragons are available through Draconic Essences, especially as we get these 5th Unbinds, that almost all the Sunlight Stones that I have, I want to put toward a Gala Dragon, because those have been the ones that remain at the highest echelons of power, in my opinion. Like your Kronos Nyx, like your Bahamut, Beast Volk. Volk with the Amp synergies has been a real surprise to me. But those are still the dragons where I'd want to, or feel comfortable flushing 4 Sunlight Stones for that max Unbind. For a dragon like Uriel, like I'll pick up a copy, I'll be happy. Of course, I want to pair him with his Apostle, but it's sort of hard to justify 4 Sunlight Stones for this type of dragon. Like, by no means bad, if you can get this 30% strength buff and 60% strength aura, that's solid, and maybe when he gets a 5th Unbind, he'll be great, but it feels like it's a ways off. So, for that reason, I think he's just okay. I would want to get him off the showcase, mostly just from the story and lore perspective, but not from a gameplay standpoint. Alright, and let's spend a little bit of time that we have left talking about Gala Euden, Gala Prince here. So, of course, Gala Prince has been around for quite a while, since the first anniversary of the game. he's put in good work over the years. He was a popular adventurer for taking on the High Dragon Trials, Zodiark on the Expert and Master difficulties. There was a popular combination where you'd use multiple princes and Floor and Yachio, the FIP combination, Floor, Yachio, Prince, to take out Zodiark without even using a healer. That was probably the most popular strategy because the spinning didn't really last that long. And I think that may have been more of a standard thing. Gosh, it's been so long, right? But yeah, Gala Prince has been good since that time. A well-beloved character to some. Since then, when the Agito content released, Tartarus, if you were going to be using light adventures for that and not using Karina's or Mitsubas or for a while Hawk and Gala Alex, well, Prince was one of the solid options that you could use for that too. And by intentionally taking damage, this is one of the cool things about his kit, so I'll read it off here. By intentionally taking damage, he can fill his dragon gauge. And that is what a lot of his play patterns revolve around. So exploiting this to be able to shapeshift immediately or more immediately or at just ideal times in a battle is one of the play patterns with him. So now that the legend difficulty of Tartarus has released, in the legend difficulty, for example, in co-op, the fight begins with some arrows, some purple arrows that Tartarus spawns, and generally, if you're playing Prince, you can tank those, at least some of them. The healer you're playing with can probably tank the others if you are playing with a healer. Get to low HP, immediately become a dragon. So I think that's a pretty common strategy that you still see used. He's totally fine to take on Master Tartarus. He's good for soloing. He can even true solo Legend Tartarus with Chronos Nyx equipped, which is just absurd that can happen, but it's been proven to happen, so that's kind of awesome. Also, something to point out here is that what they showed is him at level 80, but he does have a mana spiral from Trials of the Mighty, so he can go up to level 100. And one of the things that changes is Exalted Glory will apply a strength amp with a max level of 3. So that's why earlier I mentioned him being a possible teammate for Humanoid Jupiter. His first skill, Rising Circle, will also deal more damage. And I think really for Lilith, I would say, and also for Master Iblis, from a solo standpoint, those are fights I mostly soloed, so I can only speak from that perspective really, but like, Gala Prince was never an adventure in consideration, really. This buff zone is affected by Curse of Nihility, so that's not great, and way back in the day, this just used to have really bad damage as well. Like, the damage modifier on this was super low, so you're only really playing it for the buff. Now, a buff zone is good in a raid context, so that's one other thing to consider, that's a positive, because in a raid context, all people in the buff zone, even other players' teams, benefit, whereas if you're just buffing your own team, other players' teams don't get the buff, right? But if it's a buff zone, anybody standing in it benefits. So that is one area where Gala Euden's kind of nice. And dragon strategies are generally pretty good in raid, so now that we have a really good dragon in Chronos Nyx to equip Euden with, probably a pretty powerful strategy if we do get any high difficulty raids coming out in the future. Exalted Glory is also just a cool skill because it has a charge up to it. It doesn't charge by using basic attacks, or at least they charge it very little. So really this is just on a timer essentially. And it has this awesome portrait where it shows all of Euden's friends, and the effects actually sort of correspond to each of the friends. So this is something I've always liked about this, but it's paralysis like Luca, the strength and defense buff. I guess that's to correspond to Cleo and maybe Ellie. Maybe Ellie's like the strength and Cleo's the defense. The shield is Ronzel. Before his mana spiral, he applied a shield. Now it's a life shield. So I thought that was kind of a really cute nod in this skill, and I think all of them appear next to his portrait when he uses that. So that's a fun one to use. It's a very high damage skill too. So yeah, it does a lot of damage. So it's a pretty good skill to use during break, for example. He does also have this unique co-ability, Shapeshifting Boost 8. which adds 10% to the modifier applied to damage when in dragon form and extends shapeshift time by 20%, which benefits the whole team. And then also the shapeshift equals HP regen of 6. His abilities are Dragonlight's Resolve, decreases Dragon's Gauge depletion over time by 30%, and increases attack rate when shapeshifted by 10%. The number on the depletion improves with his Mana Spiral, but I don't think the attack rate improves. His second skill, Sacred Shield, gives him dual resistances to poison and curse. After the Mana Spiral, if you would get affected by a poison and curse or curse-inducing attack, you also get a strength buff. So he's a solid adventurer. If you don't have him, if you have Chronos Nyx but not Prince, they're really good together. And in general, with like dragons like Daikokuten, maybe even Gala Thor, although Thor is more of like, I see Thor as more of a Gala Luca thing than a Prince thing. But yeah, he has a fun play style as well, being dragon-centric. For me, I just feel a little bit fatigued of Gala Prince. He's been around so long now that I try not to play him as much because he's everywhere. He's been all over content. So that's why maybe I didn't use him in Lilith or Iblis really, or have a strong desire to. But with Legend Lilith around the corner, it doesn't seem like his kit would be good. But this is where my co-op blind spot comes into play, because I do think for the lower difficulties of Lilith, there are strategies that revolve around taking damage with Prince, or maybe just other characters in general, shape-shifting at the right times to avoid nihility, therefore stack up buffs on yourself, maybe using like a Popstar Siren. I think these strategies exist, so all that to say, I would not be shocked if there's some degenerate strategy involving Prince and maybe Chronos Nyx in the future, but I'll probably just be playing it pretty basic with maybe like Halloween Laxi and Mitsuhide or something. Just some of my units that I like whenever the new Shadow content releases. That's just me personally. But anyway, y'all, I think I've said my piece about this showcase. Hopefully you've enjoyed this longer form video, as I know I've posted a couple of the short reviews more recently. It can be hard to fit in everything into 1 minute, but I kind of enjoy that constraint. I've been having a lot of fun with those. I'm probably not going to summon for Humanoid Jupiter, so I'm not going to be able to make one about him, but I do think I'll try to do one about Gala Euden, and then maybe we'll take a look at Ferris, of course. Not too long from now, Lapis's event is going to return, so she's also on my radar as one I want to review. And I did pick up Opera Karina not too long ago, so I think she's also on my short list as that event happens. The first thing I'm going to do, though, is I got to check out Dazzling Defense. I haven't played through it yet, so that's what I'm going to do after this video. We'll post a reaction to that event not too long after this video goes up in the next couple days. But once again, though, y'all, that is going to do it for today. So thank you as always for watching. Take care, and I'll see you next time.